the more I try and narrate Daniel's thoughts, the more I sound like him. So I just need an earring and I'll be exactly him. All right, so next hand, ISILDUR again makes it 3x. He's got a near 40k stack, so he can afford to. So 6-3 deuce, it's not that relevant, right? Because the board is so dry. I assume that when ISILDUR raises 3x pre-flop, Daniel probably folds 5-4 offsuit. 5-4 suited, he might 3-bet sometimes, so he doesn't have that many straights. ISILDUR obviously can have 5-4 suited, 5-4 off probably as well, so he's gonna have more straights, and ISILDUR's gonna have all the sets, but Daniel probably will too. So this board is, it's kind of dry, right? Because who really opens many threes and deuces for 3x? Who really defends a lot of threes and deuces against 3x? Not many people, right? So this board is kind of blank. Not fully blank, but it's not as it looks quite scary at first glance. Daniel again goes for this 1400 check raise sizing. Okay. After facing a large c-bet by ISILDUR. And this 4 is very interesting because, both guys can definitely have a 5. So I think Daniel should probably size down a little bit if he decides to bet. Let's see what he does. So Daniel, as I said, like 5-4 suited sometimes, maybe sometimes he 3-bets, 5-4 off. Maybe he defends 5-4 off, right? He is KidPoker and he's the only guy on PokerStars to get positive rake back, so, or to get basically make rake while playing. So he doesn't go for quite such a big bet. So he's basically saying, like, I could have a hand other than a 5 for value. And on the river, if he had a hand like 7-5, that now gets there, so he probably wouldn't have to bluff with that. At the same time, 7-5, sorry, 7-5 was already a straight. If he had, let's say, 7-8, that now has a pair, so, he'd be value betting if he did bet, most likely, but that would be quite thin, right? Probably too thin, expecting ISILDUR to just pay him off with hand like King 6. So I expect Daniel to, find some kind of like moderate bet here or check. Drum roll, what does he do? Check, okay. And now ISILDUR, I have no idea what sizing he's going to use. It really depends on what he's trying to represent, right? If he's representing only a 5, a pretty large bet makes sense. If he's repping a hand like a set or 2 pair, he probably has to size down a little bit. So I'm guessing it's somewhere in the 5K range. I was not close. And ISILDUR gets a fold. So Daniel folded really quickly, so he most likely just had nothing. It's kind of funny, like which hand is nothing on this board? What's a snap fold? But Daniel could have just had a hand like a6, and he'd already made up his mind. Back to Daniel, who min raises eventually. And Queen 9-5 is a board that's pretty good for both players. ISILDUR is not going to have queens or nines, whereas Daniel will have them. Daniel will also have more high equity draws and just, better hands. So Daniel is definitely ahead on this board, but ISILDUR's got quite a few good hands too, right? He can have 9-5 suited and Queen 5 off and Queen 9 off and that type of stuff. So I expect Daniel to probably size up a little bit, but maybe he uses his patented half pot bet again. Half pot it is. A 900 it is. I'm sounding like a broken record. So here I like the sizing a little bit more because the board is quite draw heavy. And the ace is very interesting because, it's obviously not a good card for ISILDUR. He's not going to be check raising many hands that have an ace in it, so he's going to be a little bit more careful. He says, I don't care about your ace, so I don't care about this ace. I'm just going to bet it big anyway. So if he has a hand like 2 pair, he may believe that this is still worth a big bet, right? Playing heads up with all the draws missing. But he's got to be a bit more careful. He definitely doesn't have a hand like ace queen, for instance, which Daniel will have often. But maybe Daniel always 3-bets a flop with ace queen. Who knows? Daniel tanks. and eventually makes the call. And ISILDUR just, I'm not sure if this timing is real, but he shoved very, very quickly. Okay. Um, I mean, a lot of draws missed here. There's a lot of bluffs in ISILDUR's range, right? And what is he representing when he goes this large? Pocket fives make a lot of sense. With this metagame, I believe he's probably able to shove with hands like Queen 9, for instance. So, I mean, I'm actually not sure what he's going to show up with here. Let's see. I don't think Daniel's going to fold. Daniel's going to think, well, 6 7, 7 8, 8 6, Jack 10, Jack 8, King Jack, King 10, clubs, maybe like a random hand, everything missed, right? So what is this guy repping for value? He's repping like a set or two pair, right? And I got a hand that blocks a lot of those hands. How the hell am I not calling? Can you tell that the more I try and narrate Daniel's thoughts, the more I sound like him? So I just need an earring and I'll be exactly him. I really hope he calls. I want to see what ISILDUR has. Wow. That's dirty. That's a dirty runouts. Let's see it again. Boom! Come on. One more time. Boom! All right, so Daniel raised Queen 4 pre, which is very loose but fine. He c-bets a flop, which is all right. You know, the good thing about this hand is that obviously you have top pair. You also unblock all of his draws, so you can get value. But it's a good idea would also be to check behind because you know you've got a weak queen. You don't necessarily want to inflate the pot too much, and you know it's a good way of strengthening your check back range. ISILDUR decides to check raise here after defending pre-flop, which actually is pretty good. You know, he also unblocks a lot of bluffs in Daniel's shoes that just bet fold or hands that he's ahead of, and he has pretty good backdoors, right? Having a backdoor flush and a backdoor straight draw. So I actually don't mind this play. On the turn, I wouldn't hate if he just checks, right, and you know, kind of plays a bit deceptively. So I think you know, turn is perhaps a little bit of an overplay, but it's okay. And on the river, well, he's like, I've got aces up now. It's unlikely I'm behind, right? We've seen Daniel 3-bet the flop a lot. Maybe he just has, you know, maybe he just has hand like Queen 10. I'm just gonna shove. So I think that ISILDUR's play is okay, but he's not really thinking about his range as much as he should. So I'll give him a 7 out of 10. And Daniel, well, he's thinking, well, ISILDUR can have the aforementioned bluffs, right? Jack 10, Jack 8, 8, 7 clubs. And when I have a 4 in my hand, I don't block any of them. So I block Queen 9, which ISILDUR may be value shoving. I block Queen 5, and I don't block any bluffs. So I actually think that, and you know, he's just betting on this ace, which is not a good card for him. So that just seems very suspicious, right? So I actually think Daniel's call down is pretty good. I like the call on the turn, and I think the river call is probably okay too. So I'll give Daniel, I'll give him a 7.5 out of 10. Of course, had he won, I would have given him a 10. No, I'm kidding. We can't be results oriented, but I think his play was pretty good. So he's thinking, well, I only have a pair of queens, but you know, I unblock all of ISILDUR's bluffs, and he's quite aggressive, so I'm just gonna call down, which I don't mind. So new hand, still 200, and ISILDUR still making it 900. Let's see a 4-bet. Nope, can't do it. So we've got King 5-3, which kind of works the same as in Daniel's shoes back when it was King 4-3 about an hour ago. It's a board that doesn't really hit either player too much, but ISILDUR did 3-bet this time, so he's going to have quite a strong range here. He's going to have hands like aces and ace king and king queen and king jack, and Daniel will have some of those, but definitely not hands like ace king and aces. So again, this 2/3 pot c-bet. And so Daniel doesn't need to do a lot of raising here because, as I said, he just doesn't have a whole lot. But he doesn't care. He does go for a small raise, and again, I do like the fact that he goes for the small raise. I like this a lot. And ISILDUR doesn't care. He just calls. So this 7 doesn't really help anybody. I guess 6-4 suited improves to the nuts. 7-6 or 7-4 perhaps, but that's about it, right? So it doesn't really give either player many 2 pairs, for instance. And with a little bit less than pot behind, I'd be interested to see if Daniel ends up shoving here or if he ends up just betting maybe like 2.5K. He ships. So ISILDUR has ace king suited. And he obviously 3-bet pre-flop. He obviously see-bet the flop. And I like the fact that he only called. So it shows that he's not just like 3-betting the flop with every single good hand, but he's also capable of trapping sometimes. So I really like this trap. And obviously he's never folding the turn right to a shove because Daniel can have some bluffs, maybe like ace-4 of hearts or ace-4 or, you know, worse kings for value. Maybe he randomly puts it in with hand like 5-4 sometimes. Daniel calls a 3-bet the queen h, which is definitely good. And I don't hate the flop raise, but it's too loose, right? His combo selection is not very good, but I understand the idea. He's saying, well, I've got some potential with my hand, but at the same time, I don't want to call, so might as well raise. So yeah, it's a bit loose, but I understand what he's doing. The ideas are right. The execution could be a little bit more precise. ISILDUR, I'll give him a 9.5 out of 10. Had he bet small in the flop, I would have given him a 10, but you know, back in the day, they didn't use those small sizes much, so you can't really blame him, right? And then Daniel's plays okay. I like the calling as a 3-bet. I don't mind not folding the flop, but I don't like the raise too much. So especially with this exact hand. So and then on the turn, you know, he ships it in, blocking king queen, having a second nut flush draw, which is not too bad. So I'll give him a 6 out of 10. It's an okay play, but it's a little bit too creative. What do you guys think? Another hand, another Miniraise by Daniel. He's got 71 big blinds, which changes the game a little bit. Oh, and you see ISILDUR make it 800 instead of 900, so he's adjusting a little bit. Okay, that seems cool. And this is a really good board for ISILDUR. Actually, it's not a really good board, it's just not a bad board, right? So by default, if you have a really strong range, if the board doesn't suck, you still got a strong range. So the 4, yeah, Daniel can have a 4, like 5-4, 4-3, 4-6, ace-4, that type of stuff, but it's not that many 4s compared to all the shitty hands he's got, like, you know, Jack-10 offsuit. And the same goes for a 7. Yes, he can have pocket 7s, but he can also just have, you know, King-10 offsuit. So ISILDUR gets to be, you know, he gets to push his luck on this board. And he goes for 1K to 1600, okay. Probably size down a little bit, but you can even size up. And Daniel literally min raises. And almost every person I know overuses the word literally, but he literally min raised. He raised from, you know, from an expensive Maltese rent to a cheap London rent. So I actually think this is a clever play. This is a clever play. Daniel really knows how to raise flops. He does it. He doesn't always do it with the best hands. He doesn't always do it in spots where he should, right? Because who's to say he should raise his board very often? But yeah, he's got some good ideas. ISILDUR says fuck you, and he probably has a hand like, you know, 8s through jacks a lot. And ace, he's got aces. Oh, for a second I thought that Daniel had it. So, but he doesn't. So he calls pre with 6-5 suited, which seems fine, and I understand the get in. I actually wouldn't have minded just ISILDUR just slow playing the flop like he did with ace king, because I mean he blocks ace-4 suited with his aces, so he blocks ace-7 suited and offsuit as well. So it's really unlikely that Daniel has a value hand. I think the chances of him bluffing are quite high, right? In this case, with a high equity hand, you don't mind getting it in with. But, you know, he could just have hand like 8-5 or 10-9 or something. So I actually would have preferred a slow play by ISILDUR. And Daniel, yeah, he got it in, which is like fine. So I'll give Daniel a 7 out of 10. I'll give ISILDUR, I'll give him a 5.5 out of 10. I have to be tough on him this one. We've seen Daniel put in quite a few spazzy raises now, and I think it's a great hand to slow play with. So I'm not a huge fan of the shove on the flop. But I understand, right? If you believe that Daniels is never folding when he raises, not having much behind, then sure, go ahead. But I wouldn't have minded a slow play. So interesting. Let's just do one more. Daniel again with the min raise with slightly under 70 big blinds, and ISILDUR once again sizes down, which I agree with. And we've got a really ugly board. We've got 10-9-6. So Daniel can have 8-7 suited here, maybe 9-6, 10-9. 9s and 10s, who knows? Maybe he raises them, maybe 4-bets them pre-flop, maybe not. But he can have hands like 10-8 suited and combo draws. You know, this is a really bad board for a really good board for Daniel, and thus not the greatest board for ISILDUR. So he checks. Good instinct so far. Do you always have to check here necessarily? No, but do you have to check sometimes? Yeah. So I like that ISILDUR recognizes that this board is good for Daniel. Daniel stabs 1K in the 1600s. A little bit smaller would have been better, but again, this was 10 years ago. Can't blame them. And ISILDUR ships here, so he's representing a hand like queens or so, which would be a really sweet play. Maybe he's got a hand like ace-8 of diamonds sometimes, so really sweet play by ISILDUR. In case his hand makes sense, right? Let's see. Okay. I don't mind a 3-bet by ISILDUR sometimes, but as a standard you want to call, I love to check on the flop. He's got a medium strength hand. You know, when the turn is a 7, you got some straights like you do now. That's kind of, you know, disguised because you shouldn't have many of them. But the check raise is a little bit questionable. Like I get that you didn't have that much behind, but it's a little bit questionable. And Daniel's thinking here, well, I block 10-9, I block 9s, I block aces, I unblock hands like king queen, so I'm just gonna bet call. So I think he can stab sometimes with this hand, although you mostly want to check behind, and I don't hate the bet call. So I'll give Daniel a 7 out of 10, and I'll give ISILDUR a 6.5. It's an okay play, I get it. I understand what he's doing, and it's solid, but it's a little bit aggressive. It's a little bit too much. So what about this one, guys? That was a sweet hand. Let's see, what are you guys up to?